An entire lifetime of enduring psoriasis with a constant torment of itching and a concurrent and rapidly worsening case of psoriatic arthritis brought Dr. Andrew Cort to his knees. His healing journey began 7 years ago, and now at 74, his health is better than it has ever been. A complete shift happened, which brought him to a new spiritual outlook.
Welcome to Awakening Soul Divinity, your sacred space for deep healing and transformation. Listen to inspiring conversations with healing experts, spiritual guides, and teachers as we explore ancient wisdom, modern healing, and powerful stories of change. I'll also share practical insights from my personal journey, from spiritual crisis to inner purpose. Whether you're seeking to overcome anxiety, embrace your true nature, or awaken your higher self, this podcast offers guidance to help you transform your life and elevate collective consciousness.
Welcome, Andrew. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. I am too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm so excited you decided to join me on this journey because, we're all going through it at this point. We all have our things going on. So I look forward to having this conversation with you. So let's get started and we'll listen to the rest of your story. So can you go a little deeper into this trauma that you experience so our audience can hear how profound it is?
Sure. Let me actually talk about two lines of growth and change and evolution, I suppose, in my life that concurrently went on through many, many years and how they met at the end a few years ago. I'm going to start with a spiritual journey discussion in that when I was younger, and I'm 74 now, I'm talking about back when in the late 60s when I was a college student.
Okay.
My idea of what spirituality meant, what the purpose of life meant, was that this is kind of a battle between good and evil. And we're supposed to be on the side of good. We're supposed to be good and be good to each other and make the world a better place. And that's the spiritual imperative that I believed we had.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was, of course, very apropos of the 1960s and what was going on when I was a college student during all that time, this battle between good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying I abandon that idea as being unimportant, but some years later, I came to a different conclusion about what spirituality was, the purpose of spirituality was. And that was that it was a journey of awakening and kind of following Socrates' idea. You're supposed to be perfecting the soul, or in the Eastern idea, becoming a Buddha, or in some conscious Western ideas, awakening the Christ consciousness within yourself. And that journey from my material state of being to that awakened state of being, that seemed to me to be the purpose of life, the spiritual purpose of life. During that time, I found that in the West, the stories in Western scripture and Greek mythology are all about that. They're all quest stories. They're all about a journey. And the journey, I realized, and I spent many years working with these ideas and writing about them, a number of books about this idea. The journey that's going on in the stories is an allegory or symbolic journey of what is supposed to go on in the soul. And it's kind of an instruction manual telling you what to do if you read the stories internally and symbolically. So just to make it simple, the Hebrew story of the Hebrews going from enslavement in Egypt through a long period of activities until they reached being back with God in this promised land. That's an inner story, really, being told allegorically about my inner enslavement to material consciousness and the steps to go through to reach spiritual awakening. That's the promised land. And the stories had to be read with a symbolic understanding that way. And for instance, I can just tell very quickly a story that right after the Hebrews crossed the Red Sea, immediately the story says Amalek came and fought with the Israelites. And Joshua put together an army and they had this battle with the Amalekites, Amalek's people. Amalek means doubt.
Mm.
So the first repercussion when you take the first step toward freedom is now you doubt and lose your faith in your ability to do it. And it doesn't mean doubt that there's an external deity in the sky. It means doubt in yourself and the possibilities that are there for you and achieving freedom and
Mm.
awakening.
It's
Uh, you,
interesting.
you doubt it. And then, the story goes through all these battles and all those battles against all those kings and all those peoples and all the things they do with each other. They're all battles against your own inner negativity, limitations, and problems. And you
Mhm.
go through all those battles step by step by step through the story until you finally awaken and thus you reach the promised land. And it's like an instruction manual if read that way. And then I found that when Demeter and Persephone go from Hades all the way back to Olympus, it's the same story. And when Christ goes from the Jordan River through the cross home to his Father, that's the same story. They're
Mhm.
all the same inner story. So the idea of religious tolerance, intolerance became just pathetic to me in this understanding. Now, once again, I didn't abandon that point of view. I still think that quest and that inner work is important. But about 7 years ago, I was struck by another way of thinking about the purpose of why we're here, and what the spiritual meaning and purpose is of why we're here. And that was maybe we're here to experience and enjoy and appreciate and adore this incredible miracle of life in this realm that has been created for us to experience. So now let me go back to the other line, which is the story of my health, my personal healing journey. When I was 23, I came down with horrible psoriasis and the arthritis that you mentioned, and the arthritis was rapidly advancing. Every few days, another joint would suddenly start swelling up, and it was just getting worse and worse quickly. I was living in central New York State, and I went up to Syracuse Medical Center,
Mhm.
part of Syracuse Medical School. It was nearby, and that was the place you go if you wanted really top level healing. Now I'm talking. This was the late '70s,
Mhm.
um, mid '70s actually. And I went up to Syracuse Medical School, and their advice was, let's try taking 5 aspirin a day. Well, I went home, I started taking 5 aspirin a day, and a couple of weeks later, I went back and said, well, that didn't do anything. Where should we go now? And they said, well, let's try 10 aspirin a day. To make a long story short, this went on until we got to the suggestion of 20 aspirin a day. And even though I was young and still infused with the idea that doctors know what to do and I should just listen to doctors, well, I was even smart enough then to know that I don't need bleeding ulcers on top of
Exactly. Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah.
So this isn't going to do it. And 20 aspirin a day didn't help.
Mm-mm.
So I finally said to this, he was a young doctor, and I must say, he was just recently out of medical school. He wasn't very experienced, but he was a full-fledged doctor, and he was my doctor at the medical center. And I said to him, I said, don't you have anything stronger you can give me that will help? And he said, we do have some things that are much more powerful and would make you feel better, but they have some really bad side effects, and we don't want to give them to you until you're bedridden. I was 23 years old, and I said, bedridden? Well, when do you think that will be? And he said, somewhat nonchalantly, he said, well, the way this is progressing, probably within about a year.
Ugh.
Well, at that point, I was done with medicine for a while.
Okay.
So a friend of mine suggested I go see a chiropractor, and it was funny because about the only thing that didn't hurt was my back. So I kind of wondered, why am I going to a chiropractor? But they insisted, these two friends of mine who knew this fellow, that he does a lot of other things as well, a lot of holistic things, a lot of nutritional work, a lot of what's called applied kinesiology, testing for
Mhm.
different things, fixing different things in the body, going through layers of problems, and I should go see him and give it a try. Well, I went to see him, and after the first visit, I couldn't say I felt better, but I could say he was doing something. He was trying to find answers and things to do and making, suggestions about things that I should consider, and testing things, muscle testing and all this. He was doing something. He wasn't just talking to me and telling me to go home and take aspirin. So I was enthused enough about that to go back and see him over a number of weeks. And after a couple of months, it stopped progressing. It wasn't better, but I stopped waking up every day or two with another problem, with
Mhm.
another joint all swollen and red and horrible. It stopped progressing, and after a couple more months, it did get a little better, following his advice and having these treatments. Well, I was so excited, I went off to chiropractic school. And I expected that now that I had the key, that going through the experience of chiropractic school and what I would learn there and being worked on all the time then and after that, that this was going to go away. So I got through chiropractic school and I practiced chiropractic in the East Village in Manhattan for 10 years. And I loved the work. I loved the understanding of it, and I could help a whole bunch of people, but not myself. And I had to admit after 10 years that it steadily regressed and got worse and worse until I got to a point where I had lost my finesse physically.
Mhm.
I was feeling gloomy and horrible about my own health and was no longer of any real value to my patients. By the time I made the decision to leave, they'd mostly stopped coming anyway because you pick up vibrations about these kinds of things. So my practice failed, and I felt like I had failed, and I had to give it up. I couldn't do this anymore. So I
Mhm.
went through a bunch of changes and different things in my life for a number of years. I went to law school, loved law school, hated being a lawyer, stopped doing that pretty quickly, became a high school math and physics teacher, always liked teaching, always hated disciplining children. So that was not a happy stage of my life. During those years that I was teaching was when I did all the writing I talked about those quest stories, while I was raising my daughter. And we had this wonderful schedule that was the same. We'd get up together, we'd be going off to work together, and I'd be home with her in the afternoon. So in many ways, it was lovely to have that schedule, even though I didn't really enjoy being a high school teacher. About midway through that period, some medicine did actually come up with some new medications, which I am blessed with and am grateful for. I would say that they improved the psoriasis and arthritis at least 75, 80%. Now, it wasn't all gone, it wasn't perfect, but it certainly shifted my life and gave me a life again. Because in many ways, those two illnesses had ruined my 20s and 30s and 40s, and now I was in my 50s when this finally came out and did do quite a bit of shifting. Now, what that experience did to me, and I look back now, and would say I let it do to me. I was very gloomy. I was very miserable. I was very unhappy. I was very angry. I had a lot of blame and feeling like the world was unfair.
Mhm.
And feeling this way and physically unable to do very much. Uh, it was hard to work. It was hard to earn a living. It was hard to make money. During those years, I couldn't do what young guys often get to do. If you have a bill coming up, well, I can at least go wait tables for the weekend. Or, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do construction for the summer. I couldn't do that kind of stuff. So I really kept getting poorer and poorer and poorer, and the stress and anxiety about being poverty stricken. How am I going to take care of my child? Um, Added on to the physical problems.
Sure.
And I think you, as a woman, would probably agree with me that most women don't find men who are sickly and poor all that attractive.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
I found a lot of difficulty in my relationships as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
which I felt was, fair enough. I could understand why. I got married. We had a child. The marriage failed. Other relationships before and since then, just kept suffering because I was suffering so much. One day, about 7 years ago,
Can
I
I ask you
came.
a question? Since you
Yeah.
brought the woman thing into it, do you think it was actually the illness, or can you look back and see that it was where your energy was at?
Well, I'm sure it was where my energy was at.
Okay, because
And
yeah,
my energy was expressing pain and scarcity and poverty.
right, right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was the energy, the vibration, sure. About 7 years ago, I started looking into a question that I had heard before, but had never given much credence to. And that question was, maybe my being gloomy and miserable and unhappy isn't causing me to be is what's causing me to be poor, is what's causing me to be ill,
Mhm.
is what's causing me to be lonely and unhappy. That is, maybe it's coming from me, not the other way around. Maybe the world isn't making me miserable. Maybe I'm being miserable and making the world respond and say, okay, here's some more.
Mm.
So I started exploring making myself feel happy and not waiting for the world to change so that then I could be happy, but working on myself. And I started listening to hundreds of Esther Hicks tapes and Wayne Dyer
Tapes.
and other
Yes.
people making all these tapes. I call them
Yeah.
tapes.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Old
old
school.
fashioned.
It's old
Uh,
school.
yeah.
That's okay.
Telling me over and over and over again, the basic message was it's all about you inside you. You have to be happy and grateful and confident from yourself. And that's what shifts the world, not the other way around.
Hmm.
So I started feeling like, well, that's what I should be doing. Now I go back to where I came to in my spiritual path that I told you, where I came to the conclusion that maybe we're supposed to be loving and adoring and grateful for this wondrous experience. And if that's the purpose of life, I realized, well, I'm not very spiritual at all because I'm gloomy and miserable and I'm on the dark side. So I had to start kind of shifting that.
Hmm.
And as I say, I started working on my own inner self creation of being happy, finding gratitude, finding confidence and courage in life, and being positive, and finding love within myself, and not waiting for the world to change, but hoping the world would change if I did these things with myself.
Hmm.
And it did. Slowly at first, a little more over time. There was a lot of momentum pushing me the other way, a lot of inertia from a lot of years, a lot to keep struggling against and keep waking up again and again and again and starting over. But I kept pursuing that inner effort. And over time, things got much, much better. I'll just jump to the end of that with corroborating your story that I'm 74 now and my health has never been better. My whole life has never been better than it is right now. And the work that I did uh, enabled me to write to go back into practice and see patients because my health was better and now it was much better. And this work that I did made me shift my whole way of thinking about helping patients and led to the book I wrote,
Hmm.
which is about all that I had learned and all that had affected me and sharing that so that other people struggling with those difficulties can make that same shift.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
first shift being a mindset shift.
Hmm.
The second piece, clearing out all the negativity and all the limiting beliefs, and then doing all the manifestation techniques that many people do talk about. But I believe they only work after you've done that in that earlier work. You've shifted your mindset and cleared away the debris. Then the affirmations and the visualizations and the
Hmm.
gratitude journals, then all of that works. And
Yes.
so that's what the book is about, and that's what my practice is about.
Okay, so that's because I was going to ask you if you can give a brief just an idea of from your personal healing journey, how did that shape that shaped the work that you do now to support other people? So you wrote the book, I believe, Create Yourself Anew from Above Down, and then
Right.
can you want to say the rest of it because I don't remember what it is and it's
Oh.
a
the,
little
the
long.
subtitle,
But
the
yeah.
title is Create Yourself Anew from Above Down,
Uh-huh.
which is the basic idea is you don't fix things down here.
Yeah.
You don't stay in Egypt and try and fix the slavery. You
Right.
know, you
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
recreate yourself anew from the above down, and that's the mind shift I talk about.
Right. Right.
The subtitle is then by choosing. I'm reading because I don't want to confuse myself and get lost.
Okay.
By choosing who and what you prefer to be in this multiverse of all possibilities.
Okay, so that'll help. Thank you for that. That'll help
Okay.
lead us into another couple of things that I wanted to talk to you about because
Mm.
that book really like changed some stuff for me about a week and a half ago. So I'm going to share that shortly. But so you're an author. Do you do speaking? Are you a coach? I mean, are there any other things that are you still doing healing work? What else are you doing to help your clients or whoever if you're
Yeah.
working with anybody? If you could share
Yeah.
that real quick.
Yeah. I'm starting to think of my healing work as moving closer toward the coaching idea, but I'm not a coach. I'm also not a. I don't tell people I don't think in my head that I'm a healer. I help people heal. I assist. The healer is
Sure.
you.
Yeah, of
So
course.
yes, I see patients here in Woodstock, New York, and I see some patients. I'm happy to see more on Zoom online. I spend 90 minutes or so with patients. My I talk with them about what their issues are and what they want. I try not to get them to go on and on and on too much into the negativity of it,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
I do need to know what they're dealing with so I can help get help them get what they want and know what that is.
Sure.
So we talk a bit, certainly the first time, and we talk a bit again. The first phase of what I do with patients is um, if they have some particular ache and pain, I have a lot of skills from the old days that I try to use to help with that. But that's not the basis of my work. Um, I, I spend a lot of time getting them deeply relaxed, letting the body open up, let the parts of the body and the cells awaken and relax and be receptive to healing vibrations
Mhm.
because I firmly believe that the universe is benevolent. And when you ask for healing, it comes, but it comes as a vibration. And if we're physically like this, that vibration can't get in. And if we're emotionally full of negativity and anger and hatred, it can't get in. And if our mind won't shut up, it can't get in. So
Mhm.
trying to get people really past all that and deeply relaxed and receptive and open, then I work with my intention and my own vibration and my intuition, such as it is, to go through the parts of their body seeking to uh, undo energetic blockages,
Mhm.
as well as physical tension blockages and nervous system and blood flow blockages, getting the body relaxed and working energetically. And I do that with full faith that something much bigger than me is working through me and I'm not doing that, but it's
Right, right,
happening.
right.
And then after I get through the whole body and they're deeply relaxed like that, and the last piece of that I do is some cranial work. So I've started
Mhm.
at the feet and I work through the body, and now sitting behind them at their head and doing some cranial work. And then I bring them into a hypnotic like, because I'm not a hypnotist, but I do guided visualizations. And a lot of hypnotist friends of mine tells me there's really no difference. I get them into a
Yeah.
deep theta trance-like state.
Mhm.
And I suggest some questions for them to ask their higher being self, their inner guidance, their God, or however they perceive it within themselves. They're asking the questions and listening to themselves. And this takes some time, and we go through some layers. What we're basically doing is looking for the negative limiting beliefs and ideas that need to be cleared away. And so the two basic questions, and I'll just summarize and move on. The two basic questions that we go through over a visit or a few visits or a number of visits to go through layers is what am I believing that's causing me to be stuck in this? And the other big question is, what am I afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
What am I afraid will happen if I let this all go and become who I choose to be?
Hmm.
So we go through that work and bring all that stuff into consciousness, to an awareness, and feel it and see it and experience it, because I'm not saying that you can change or eliminate those beliefs by forcing them away. You become aware of them in the light of consciousness by feeling them and experiencing them and remembering them and honoring them and accepting them. That brings them into the light of consciousness, and dark things don't like the light. And it
That's a
begins
whole
to,
nother
yeah,
conversation.
yeah,
Dark things don't
yes.
like the
But
light.
it all begins to dissipate on its own.
Yeah.
And really, I think what's happening is the beliefs don't dissipate actually, because nothing goes away in this universe, but your attachment to them can let go.
Right. Right.
And now you can be free to now focus on what it is you want and energetically and vibrationally draw that in to your
Mhm.
life. So once we get there, depending on what they have told me they want to change in their life and what their wishes and hopes for are in their life, then I do with them some affirmation work. Now they're in a theta trance state, so they're able to take suggestions in a deeper way, some affirmations, and having them visualize the life that they want, and gain some, positive vision of it. So that's how I practice.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
practice, as I say, in person in Woodstock, New York. I also can practice on Zoom. Obviously, the touch portion has to be very different because we're on Zoom, but all these other things are still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
this is the sequence of what my book goes through as well.
okay. So it gives an idea of what you went through the book, what you walked through, how you work with your clients or patients, and then how others can like read the book and kind of get an idea of the sequence of events, really, because you're right. I mean, it all, as you laid it out, that's not a lot of us go through it in that process, or we go in circles. And what you did was you
Yeah.
kind of laid it out into a process that's easier to follow than, those of us who have gone through 35 years, of healing work, going back and forth and in and out and all through that. So I heard everything, that I experienced with my healing in that, but mine was a little, all over the place. But I want to bring something in here because I think it's important. You talk about how life is meant to experience. And we talked about that when we were on our pre-interview. And so I don't normally do this within a conversation with a guest. I'm talking to my audience, so this is going to be interesting, but I wanted to share something with both Andrew and you all that I felt was important because it has a direct connection with the book that Andrew wrote, the Create Yourself Anew from Above Down. And I even have the rest of it. Okay. So by choosing who and what you prefer to be in this multiverse of all possibilities, there are a ton. And the way this experience came together for me was like totally mind-blowing. So it's so profound. It occurred one morning, like I said, about a week to 10 days ago. And what happened was I had asked him the best chapters to read in his book. And he basically said the preface, I think it was the preface and chapter 1. So that morning I got up and I had a complete breakdown from everything going on in the world, in the US. And I kept asking God to allow me to see and feel its energy as I had not known personally from my life experiences, or so I thought, what that was like fully for most of my life. Like I had sneak peeks here and there. And from this space that I was in, because my family had, our generational trauma is deeply connected to what's going on in the world. from the threat of what's happening in Israel, where that happens to be a place where my mother and my grandparents escaped to at the beginning of World War II. They were living in Prague, Czechoslovakia at the time. And in 1939, they left and they went to Palestine because at that time it was not Israel. And so this is all in my DNA. So I'm just laying there, all this stuff's coming up to be grieved, released, all these things that Andrew was mentioning about how he works with his clients. And the other pieces of this that came up was like why I'm even here, doing my best to heal myself and the generational trauma, to holding space for others by supporting their healing, and the list goes on. And so it was like this full out existential crisis I was in, where what happened was, as they used to say while I'm laying in bed, let the wailing and gnashing of teeth begin. I swear I just completely lost it. I'm crying. I'm like, all this stuff's coming out, grief all over the place, which basically means that the anguish and regret experienced by those who are excluded from God's presence. And I think that came from his writing. I had mentioned that. I've got notes here, but I mentioned that. I believe that came from that. And I actually looked up the meaning to discuss this in this interview. And anyway, what came next, the words from Andrew's book that struck me to my core, and not because I didn't know this already, because that day that I was writing or reading this and wrote this out, it seemed was a day that it just had to register with me finally, was this. I was asking why I could not see or feel God. I also use the words creator, higher power. And I was deeply feeling and grieving everything, like I said. And once it was over, I was waiting and doing other things because I knew eventually I would receive an answer somehow. I felt it. And as suspected, it came because that's when the reminder was like, well, you got to sit down and read Andrew's book. And and this came from that first chapter. I'm skipping over some things to get to the pertinent parts of this aha moment. Like everything else, this is the quote from his book, like everything else, you are made of God. There is nothing else to be made of. Therefore, you and I and everyone and everything is God. You are God. I'm also kind of skipping pieces of it just to make sure I get the right information in. Be still and know that I am God. Within this state of oneness, you realize that all the power of the universe, like everything else, is part of you. You are limitless. You are deeply connected to everything. You are everything. All is sacred. All is one. And you are all. And finally, the other part that I read that was so profound for me. If you want to see God, just look around you. Everything you see is God revealed. If you want to know God, which is my version of feeling God, just look inside and listen. The divine is always with you, just as you are always one with the divine. The divine always hears you. You are never alone. Okay, so I don't know if you're keeping up with what this is, what I'm trying to portray here, but I asked to see and feel God. And he said in the book about what the truth was, I am God. So I'm always with seeing, feeling, and that just like, so that morning, I was literally looking for some kind of answer the way I thought I was supposed to see it, feel it, or hear it. And maybe, getting that big booming voice I had always read about. Everybody says, well, God spoke to me and it said this and it said this, and it was big booming voice. I begged to get the answer the way I would understand it, right? And I'm an avid reader. And that afternoon, I got my answer in a way that I never expected from Andrew's book. I had planned to read these first two chapters at some point that day, like I said, and it was as if they were literally sitting there waiting for me. And my experience in that is that everything truly is energy and vibration felt into the universe and reverberated back to me to read that day. I hope all that made sense. That was my experience. And I felt it was important to share this with you, the audience, and for you, Andrew, because, you wrote it. So, first, if you have any questions to make it more understandable, ask me, but please go deeper for the audience on the connection between your chapter writing and my experience. If you can share a little bit of wisdom on that, I'd really appreciate that.
Well, the book is called Create Yourself Anew from Above Down. And you contacted the above part of that. It's distinct from the idea that most of us live with day to day, that this world that we perceive around us, which by the way isn't the world, it's just our limited perception, but we all agree when we're very young on what this looks like, and we're living in this world, and for a reason, by the way. It's not a bad thing. But we tend to separate ourselves and feel that this is it, and it is separate from God, who, if there's such a thing, is out there somewhere, and we're down here somewhere. And we're separate from each other, and we're separate from nature, and our inner parts are separate. Our emotions and our mind and our body are separate from each other. The mind-body link is a new idea for some people, that they're connected. That separation is the big issue. And in that separation, we have this life we have created around us that we think is created to us, that we have to fix all these problems. We have to fix the circumstances. Everything's hard and difficult, and we're struggling through this and that, and we have to make everything happen the way we want by fixing the circumstances.
That's what it felt like. Yeah, fix it now.
Yeah, fix it now. And a couple of angles to go at it. This one is you can't fix anything.
Mm-hmm.
What you can do, like I was saying with those limiting beliefs, is you can observe. You can take the ancient Greek view, know yourself,
Mm-hmm.
which meant observe yourself, observe your life, just see it. See it clearly and really. Stop lying to yourself and hiding from it, and see it. And when you see it, much of this will simply dissolve itself. You don't fix it. Grace, if you will, washes it away when it's up in your consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of trying to fix things, to which we have very limited power, and we put all our efforts into that, I always did, most people I think do, put all their efforts into fixing things,
Mm-hmm.
which I have learned isn't going to fix much. And you can just look at the world through history, and not much has changed. You can look at your life, probably not much has changed. All this fixing has really just been spinning in circles. Instead, shift to where your power really is. The first sentence of chapter 1 is, you are God.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm careful to distinguish. Now, I'm not saying you're the God or the only God. You're not a big towering entity who lives in the sky trying to get even with us when we're naughty. And that's not what God is. God is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And as you went through already, if God is everything, well, you're God, because you're part of everything. Everything is sacred. Everything is divine. And when you take that stance of being God, you're taking the stance of being a creator. Because that's what God is. God creates. You're God. You create. You have created the world. I've realized this in my story that I mentioned before. You have created the world you're living in. You have created the circumstances. Now, can you choose to create something different? Yes, you can choose to create something different. And there are means and ways of learning how to do that. The first part, though, is just to take your stance of who you are. You are not a miserable, separate person living in a big mess that you have to fix. You are a sacred, divine part of the divine, godly oneness of everything. You are a magnificent being, filled with creative power, filled with wisdom and knowledge and intuition and knowing exactly what to do when you take your stance there and listen to the voice of your highest self rather than listening to the ego complaining and worrying and anxious and, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? That's not where your power is. Your power is in your I am God consciousness, the Christ consciousness, the Buddha consciousness. It's been said in so many ways through different traditions and centuries, but it's being there, and it's not so much getting there, it's remembering that you are there. That's something I've been learning to distinguish from my earlier work about that quest,
Mhm.
is that it's not a quest to get somewhere you've never been before. It's a quest to get back to who you are and remembering
Yeah.
who you are and what you are. And then this is a multiverse of all possibilities, and now you can choose the kind of life you'd prefer to live from your highest self. And then you can go through the techniques that help vibrationally draw it into you.
Mhm.
But you can't force it, you can't push it, you can't make it happen from down here. You have to make it happen from the above down. So that's the main mind shift, which is always the first thing you have to do to change and grow, is to shift your mindset. That's the great mindset that I talk about in the book before anything else, is to remember who and what you are. And you are God.
Mhm. And that yeah, it was just, I mean, literally I could feel like I've, with all the work that I've done throughout my life, I've learned, I've gotten the tools, I've done all these things to get myself, and don't think that once you get to a certain point it stops, it goes away, because this is a journey, it's a healing journey. But that, it was like that day when it just showed up in your words in the book. And like I said, I've heard it before, I've read it before, I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. Sometimes we don't actually know what we think we know. And then I read it, and maybe it was written differently, I don't know what was going on, but when I realized that, I was like, I've been, my whole life I was raised Jewish, but I had no connection to Judaism. And the way that Jewish people write God out, G-D, was my entire life. It just felt like this disconnect, because there wasn't, I don't know if it was the word, I don't know what that was, but I never really felt a connection with God. And that's why I started, using different words and bringing different words in of who God is and trying to understand all that and whatever. But when I got up that morning, it was a typical thing. It was like, you know, where are you? Are you really here? Are you really helping? Can you please just speak up and say, and give me the advice I need, or whatever. And I went through that whole thing, and I actually, the words that you put in there, be still and know that I am God, that's where the connection landed, because I've always said that. Somehow I knew that, so I sat, and I could literally, because I do energy work, so I feel energy too. So I'm sitting there, and when I read that, it was like whoosh, all this like envelopment of energy just showed up, and I'm like, that's it, that's why I got so excited, because I wanted to about sharing that here, because that's what it felt like. It wasn't this big booming voice, it wasn't this, like you said, God coming down from the sky or Jesus coming down from the sky with his arms reached out, or any of that stuff. It's all still, and there's such a, I can't think of the word, what's the word I'm looking for, it's like subtle, it's subtle. The answers for me, and probably most people, when we keep expecting these big, shock and awe moments, they're not like that, they're subtle. And because to me, and from listening to what you've been talking about, the subtlety is there for us to listen. If it was loud, we'd be like, meh, whatever. If it's subtle, we come in closer. We come in to listen to this. We come in to listen to what's being told to us. And when I say come in, now I'm getting another download. It's like we come into our heart. It's like it's all in here. That's what that felt like for me. So I just want to thank you for having those words, for writing those words and putting those in the book and being here for me to have that experience, because had we not connected to do this conversation, to have this interview, I would have probably never seen those words. I don't know. I'm sure it would have ended up coming out in the wash in some other way, but that was very profound for me. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Well, you're
So,
welcome, and thank you for telling that whole story. I mean, that's hearing stories like that is my great hope in publishing the book.
yeah,
Is
yeah, yeah.
precisely hearing stories like that. So
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's important because we're here to basically walk each other home, and
Yeah,
right, this.
yeah,
This is all
yeah,
part of
right.
your work. So, one more question I want to ask you before I get into the questions that I ask everybody at the end of the conversations I have with them is, how does the concept of a multiverse fit into the message of your book? Because you mentioned that, but I didn't really get anything from that in a description.
Okay. So the idea of this being a multiverse is a very ancient philosophical idea, which has gained a lot of new credence amongst many scientific people, particularly the quantum physics people,
Hmm.
uh, looking at uh, the world that way, that we live in an infinity. It goes on and on and on and on. And that actually you can use the word multiverse or different timelines or multi dimensions kind of interchangeably, however you want to see it. But there's much, much more going on that we do not see, universe after universe after universe. Now, when you take the word infinity seriously, it means infinity. Everything on and on and on, more and more, everything possible exists in infinity. Because if you're imagining something, it exists somewhere in the infinity, or you couldn't be imagining it.
Is that potentials? Is that what that potential, the quantum physics potentials is? Like it
Well,
exists, it already exists out there that all you have to do is like connect with it.
yeah,
Is that what
yes,
that? Okay.
yes. Okay. So I've learned and can't prove this in a test tube, but I've learned, and maybe your readers know the word grok from years ago. You deeply, deeply just understanding something as opposed to just being able to repeat it. Um, grok this idea that this is a multiverse, and all the kinds of things from near-death experiences that people talk about and past lives that they talk about and deja vu and all these kinds of things just corroborate this idea that there's so much more out there available that we're not typically conscious of, but our eyes only see a tiny little bit of the light spectrum. We only hear a tiny little bit of the audible spectrum, the audio spectrum. But what we perceive isn't reality. It's just a tiny little portion of how we perceive it. There's much more going on.
Hmm.
There's a whole multiverse going on. And in that multiverse, every possibility exists somewhere. There have to be an infinity. There have to be worlds that are kind of like this one, but worse and totally miserable. And there have to be worlds that are nothing like this. And there have to be worlds that are very similar to this, but more wonderful. And there has to be every possibility, because that's what infinity means. Now, the experience we're having is limited to what we can perceive, and it's limited mostly by, well, it's limited by our perceptions and it's limited by our beliefs and expectations.
Hmm.
We see the world we see because of what we've been taught, what we've seen before, the limitations of our eyes and ears and intelligence and heart, and the perceptions we've had and the beliefs we have that this is what I believe is so. This is happy. If I drop this, it's going to fall. We've all full of stuff that we believe either because we've experienced or usually because somebody told us. And that is the world we perceive, but that's not the whole universe. So one of the things I believe is true is that somewhere in this universe there is a version of me living a life in which this or that that I wish I had in this life is being experienced by a version of me. And can I unite with that and draw that into my world? Well, there have been people for some years talking about quantum jumping and jumping to those different places and apparently doing it, and bringing back this, evidence that this exists. There's a wonderful analogy that a, a channeler named Daryl Anka, who
Mm,
claims to be channeling an outside extraterrestrial entity. And I don't know if that's literally happening or not. And I don't care any more than I care if Shakespeare or somebody else wrote those words. It's the words and the meaning and what's there that matters, the grist of it. And one of the things he has said is this analogy. The multiverse is like a television set in your living room, and you're sitting there watching Channel 4.
hmm
And you're watching Channel 4 because you've pressed a button on your remote that tunes in the frequency that's being put out by Channel 4. You don't see anything else but Channel 4 when you're tuned in to Channel 4. But there's a program running on Channel 5. There's one running on Channel 3. These days of cable, there are hundreds of channels all running right now. They all are existing, and these stories are all happening.
Yeah.
And some of them are very different, and some of them are full of love, and some of them are dramatic and full of hatred, and some of them are about wealth, and some of them are about poverty, and some are about happiness, and some of them are about misery. And all these millions of stories are going on right now. And if you get tired of the one you're watching, you change the channel.
Change
And
the.
changing the channel means you've changed the frequency that you're putting out that attracts the frequency reflected back to it of that channel.
hmm
And the frequency is the vibration you are putting out into this universe that is mostly created by your beliefs and thoughts and feelings. That's creating your vibration.
Yeah.
And you're creating this channel right now. You don't have to be,
So
but you
stop
are.
it.
You don't have to, but you are.
Stop it.
Now, what will fix this? Well, you got to change you. You got to send out another vibration. That means becoming something different yourself
Yeah.
and changing your thoughts and beliefs and ideas and all of that, shifting you to emanate a different vibration. And you want to emanate a vibration that matches with what you want in life, which is why people do affirmations and visualizations to create the vibrations of that they want and desire and,
But
and bring it toward you.
isn't
Now,
that vibration actually your truth? That's who you are anyway.
I've heard it put that way, and yes, I think that's so, except I think that what you are, in italics, what you are anyway, is this whole multiverse of experiences.
hmm
You are all of it. You can see. I also have learned from the physicists and from my own understanding, even though I don't experience the experience of it, but I know that there's really no such thing as time and space. This
hmm
is all mentally constructed. There is only this one now eternal moment. So somewhere in the universe, I'm experienced being a Mongolian warrior. And somewhere in the universe, I'm experiencing being a woman in New York City in the 20s, because everything exists. Now, I think when people feel they're experiencing a past life, there is no past, there is no future, there's just now. And what they're actually tuning into is one of these other experiences that they have already had, and they're remembering it and bringing it back in. But it's always there.
It's
So when you say it's what we are all of it.
yeah. Well, I don't mean to interrupt, but I do. So it's an experience that you said that we already had But if we're looking at it in timelines, then we're actually having that past life experience at the same time that we're
Exactly.
having this one. Now that's when you start going,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, okay.
Exactly. It's hard to use words because the way words
They
work,
don't fit with
but
this stuff.
you're it's happening right now, and you can tune into that channel, and sometimes some little shock might tune you into it for a few moments, and you have what you think is a memory of a
Yeah,
past life, but
I've
it's
had
there
those.
right now, and it's about what your consciousness is aware of
Mhm.
right now,
Interesting. Yeah.
because it's all vibration, and vibration is just consciousness in motion. It's all
Energy is
consciousness.
everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Energy is everything. So I'm gonna thank you so much for that. That was a beautiful explanation. I wasn't, I mean, I got a whole bunch of good notes for this, and it all started off with grok because I never really knew what grok meant.
Oh, grok.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
it. I wrote it down. I know now. Okay. I'm gonna go through and ask these questions that I ask all of my guests. We're gonna start with, is there anything that you would like to share to someone just starting out on their journey from your perspective?
Well, just what I would call the prime directive. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're deciding to change in your life, start with recognizing that despite whatever you are experiencing, the inner truth of reality is that you are a sacred and magnificent being. Start there and make
Yes.
sure you do know that that's who and what you really are.
Mhm.
And then everything else will start falling in place.
Even if you don't believe that right now,
Even if you
just
don't
start
believe it.
placing the little
Mm,
seeds in your head, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
I'm not here to fix anybody, but if I can put a seed in your head, just as Carolyn just said, I've done more than my job. Now
Yeah.
it's you.
Yes. Thank you. That's beautiful. How would you define awakening?
Becoming conscious of that, be going from letting that seed grow, and until you really do get that you are God.
Mm, I love that.
And it's not awakening to something new, it's awakening to something that's always been there.
Which is my next question. What do you believe soul divinity is? You just said it. Go ahead.
Well, just your soul is that what you said? Your soul?
Soul divinity.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you
So
said
so
waking up to something that's always been there. And
right,
to me, that's
right,
what that is. So
right,
I
right.
just want to hear
Okay.
yours.
So as best as I can understand it for myself, and maybe this will help others, consider the idea, um, which is very much made clear in books by Neil Donald Walsh's Conversations with God. This is a big idea there, but it's an ancient idea. It's not new, but he does talk about it very clearly, and I'm going to try and talk about it. This idea that in the beginning, which isn't in time, it's just the most fundamental. Uh, God is everything, and God is pure consciousness.
Mhm.
And God begins to contemplate itself because there's nothing else to contemplate. And then decides that it wants to experience its magnificence. But as just pure consciousness, it doesn't experience. So it creates from itself, dividing itself into individual souls, which are always part of it, always one with it, but have their own creativity and their own existence. And these create for themselves these bodies in this material world. And when you and I act and do things in the world and experience things in the world, we are God's eyes and ears. This is God experiencing the world. And that's what God wants, which leads to a few conclusions. And one is that nothing is bad. God wants to experience everything. We put judgments on things.
Mhm.
God doesn't. God wants to experience everything, whether we call it good or bad, evil or naughty, terrible, good, fun, sad. wants to experience all of it. So all of what you experience, you should honor, because that's why you're here, is to experience. This kind of goes back a little deeper in what I concluded a while ago, that we're here to experience and
Mhm.
enjoy and appreciate this whole life, the shadow as well as any other part of it, and honor it and live it, and be grateful for the magnificent life, and shift it as you prefer by these things we've talked about, because it's all there for you to experience. God wants to experience everything. And our soul is divine because it's part of God. And it is God, and it's one with God, and there's only God having this experience that through us, through this form of us that
Mm.
it created to have experience. I hope that makes some sense.
Oh
It's
my,
kind of
that was
esoteric and
beautiful.
weird.
Well, I'm
So,
esoteric and weird, so I understood it
okay.
completely. Yeah, take a breath. That was very powerful. I mean, there's a lot of energy behind that and a lot of feeling and love because it's that, I mean, that's just a beautiful explanation of what that looks like. And it's out there. It's been out there. It's just being able to take all that in and connecting with it as who we are with that brings that into being, you know? So, Andrew, how can people get in touch with you?
Ah, the best way to get in touch with me is to go to my website, which is just my name. It's www.andrewcort.com. I
Okay.
do need to remind people there's no U, there's no letter U in Cort. It's Andrew Cort, C-O-R-T, andrewcort.com. That brings you to my website. You can find out much more about my whole practice, all the things I do. You can find out all about this new book I've written. And on other pages of the website, you can find out about all my books. They're all there, and they're all on Amazon. They're pretty much all on paperback, Kindle, and audio books. Um, you can order directly off my website. The link just brings you to Amazon if you, to buy the book, to buy any of my books. I hope you will. I hope the experience that Carolyn had inspires you, that it can give you a wonderful experience too. That's the whole purpose of it. You can connect with me. My email address is there. My telephone number is there. And you can call for an appointment for a healing session, or several, on Zoom, or if you're in the area, in person. And you can just contact me and talk to me. You can do that
Yeah.
too. It's all, just there on the website.
Mm.
Also, if you, at the top, there's a box where you can put in your email address, and I immediately send you a digital version of a book I wrote a couple of years ago called The Real Cause of Pain and Sickness and What You Can Do About It. And it's kind of a self-healing guide.
Hmm.
And I send you that right away when you just fill in that box.
Okay. And also, obviously, like in all other situations or cases, his information, his links will be in the description below. And
Thank you.
this is, I guess, the best way for me to put it in my own mind is groundbreaking work for Andrew, for all of us, because this isn't something that most people do every day, right? So you're walking into this whole space of something completely different, this experience that is waiting for you, ready to change your life. And it's powerful. Trust me. I mean, even 4 years ago, even a couple of years ago, I would not be sitting on this platform on YouTube or wherever else I'm in talking to people about this stuff because I was in it. I was in everything. I was healing from everything. I was in the depths of all of it. And when we make that decision and take the steps into creating being the creator of this life that we want, everything changes. You start to meet people you never thought you were going to meet. You start to connect with, you know figuring out what you're meant to do on this planet and then start connecting with other people to work together with them. There's so many opportunities out there that I personally never thought I would get to. So this work, and the more it comes out, is so important for us as a species, as a human, as, whatever. Here we are. Let's just do it. Before I forget, I want to ask you if there's anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up.
Well, I was just thinking that I missed saying one thing about transformational work, and it has to do with affirmations and positive thinking, and saying, knowing that an affirmation should be very positive, never negative, never "I don't want this," always what you do affirm. That it should be in the present tense, that it should have some feeling behind it, and so on. All these ways of doing it well and doing it correctly. But I do want to
Well,
just mention.
can you mention why that is? So
Oh,
our
because
audience.
your inner world doesn't respond to what you don't want. So it just is, I don't want to be poor anymore. Well, all it hears is poor anymore, and that's the vibration you're talking about, and that's
Right.
what the
Yes.
universe feels.
Yes.
It
Thank
doesn't
you.
hear your words; it feels the vibration, and
Yes.
your vibration is poor anymore. So you put it in positive language, and you try to feel it. That enhances the vibration.
That's what I
Try to
wanted
make
you
it
to. Okay.
real.
Thank you.
But the thing about affirmations that I think people miss is that if you start saying, all right, you're tired of being poor and living in scarcity. And so you start affirming over and over again, because you've heard that this will change your life. You start affirming over and over again, I am wealthy, I am successful, I am wealthy, I am successful, I am wealthy, I am successful. And there's an inner voice in you that for the last 50 years has been saying, you're poor and worthless, you're poor and worthless. And that's been going on forever, since mommy or daddy said something they don't even remember saying. But little Johnny took it in and has been saying it to himself subconsciously forever. That voice is going to win that argument. When you just start affirming out of nowhere in this whole lifetime of all that negativity, now you start affirming, I am wealthy, I am successful. You can't expect much change from that. You have to shift out of that negativity first. And that's why the whole sequence I talked about, take your stance in your I am consciousness. You're a creator, you're magnificent. Clear away the debris, clear away the weeds of all those negative beliefs. And there are techniques for doing that I talk about in the book and that I use with my patients. And then the affirmations can work, because they're not fighting with yourself. You
Mhm.
know, now you're reaching for something new, and you've opened yourself to receive something new.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. That's beautiful because I do coaching, and when we, like you're saying, when we do affirmations, it's in order to even get that clear channel for these affirmations to work. It's part of the healing process, like you're saying. You need to step in and do these, in Andrew's case, what he does to work on the process of what helping you to work through this stuff. But healing is like the priority, because no, the affirmations don't work, because I remember that's why I was laughing or smiling when you said that, because I was like, yeah, I'm healthy and I've got all this crap going on. I feel like crap and I'm tired all the time. But I'm healthy. I'm healthy. I'm healed. I'm healthy. It didn't work at that time. And I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Dr. Wayne Dyer said this. Affirmations without the healing part of it, it's like putting the brake pedal and the gas pedal on at the same time. You're not going to go anywhere. You're going to kind of jerk back and forth, because it's not going to get you anywhere. So that's what Andrew's talking about. It's like there's processes to do before doing the affirmations. You can still do them, and the more you heal, the more you'll believe what you're saying. So that's where that comes in. So anyway, thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate you and your book for
Thank
being
you.
here. And I just want to say I'm grateful, and we're all in this together. We've got this in some way, right? Even though we don't feel like it sometimes when we come together, we've got that energy coming together. So regardless of what's going on, have a beautiful day or night wherever you are. And thank you for being here on Awakening Soul Divinity. And that's it. Peace.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.